Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. I hope you all have had a great Thursday. We're finally working our way to the end of the work week and we're getting closer to the weekend, but there's a lot to talk about in the weather world. We're going to step away from severe weather season, which is gradually starting to kind of, on average, threaten areas more and more north as the jet stream on average begins to shift. There's a lot to talk about in the tropics. Hurricane season is approaching, and there are some things to talk about. First off, we're going to break down some things about the potential for a first name storm, which would be Anna. And then we're going to break down, which has become a hot topic in the weather world over the last 12 to 18 hours, the potential for energy that's worked its way off the coast of Texas into the Gulf of Mexico that has a chance to develop into something. The National Hurricane Center hasn't quite mentioned it yet, but they likely will here in the next update or two. By the time some of you guys watch this video, it might be different. So we're going to talk about those two things. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button. Hurricane season is rapidly approaching and it's going to get very active. So definitely hit the notifications bell and hit the subscribe button and like the video if you like it. And just thank y'all for the incredible support. Also, if you have anything that I can pray about or anybody in the comments can pray about, there's a lot of people who are subscribed to my channel who definitely love the opportunity to pray for you all. So if it's unspoken, put that, and we can take care of that too. God can take care of that also. But that's all with that. So let's go on and get going here because there's a mouthful to talk about. So stick with me here. So check it out here. This is basically a bunch of energy way out in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, way off the coast of the Mid-Atlantic and New England. And it's kind of just dwindling out here. You just got an 80% chance to develop in the next 2 days here into a tropical depression, and then basically it has a 90% chance to develop within the next 5 days, but it's going to develop sooner than that. You got a tropical wave, a depression, a storm, and then you got hurricane, and you got category 1 through 5. Most of y'all know that, but this is not going to threaten land. I know you see the little area right here, the disturbance area, and it's going towards the United States, but don't be scared. What's going on is there's a ridging in place on both sides. It's kind of steering this. There isn't much steering currents. We're going to talk about that, but the name of the storm would be Anna, A-N-A. That's the first name. It would be a subtropical storm, but it's going to get some characteristics of a tropical storm. It's probably going to develop a warm core, but there's not a whole lot to talk about this storm, even as it develops. It's basically going to drift west and not going to be any kind of impact to land. This is kind of like the satellite imagery here. Not satellite, but this is basically showing the brightness, how hot or cold the clouds are. It gives you a good idea. There's not much there. It looks shredded, not shredded because it never was really put together, so it's hard to use that word. But you can see the circulation, the kind of the low level circulation there, and that's why it has some characteristics of a tropical system. So this is going to continue to form. What's going to happen here is we're going to jump to the GFS, and this is it right here. This is Anna, what could potentially be Anna. I might call it Anna like it's already named Anna. I do apologize. It's going to become a habit because we're so used to naming tropical systems names, but this is not named yet by any means. But this is our potential tropical system right here, subtropical system. So watch as I move through in time. We get into tomorrow, around this time tomorrow. Notice it hasn't moved much. What happens is it begins to drift west, and then it kind of drifts more southwest. It has ridging on this side, and we obviously know we have a big upper ridge right over the eastern U.S. That's going to act as a blocking. It's going to prevent this potential cyclone or depression from affecting the lower 48 at all. So it's just not going to. Even if it did, even if it kept drifting, I don't think the environment would be favorable for strengthening at all. So you got a little bit of ridging on top of this, so that's why it's not really moving away right now. But as you get going through in time, it's going to drift southwest into a little bit more warmer waters. There's a little bit more warmer waters around, basically around Bermuda right here. So it's going to strengthen a little bit as in at most a low-end tropical storm, which would be Anna. Once this gets going, you basically have a little trough right here that really pulls through and only affects to northeast. And this gets going through here, and you notice it just disappears. It merges with this trough, and it's gone. See you later. So you look at the heights right here, and this is our big ridge in place, and this is a little bit of ridging in place over here. Notice it briefly kind of surrounds the potential tropical system right here, briefly. But eventually, and like I said, you have some big time upper ridge of high pressure right here over the eastern U.S. That's not going to allow it to move any more west. And it's not, can't really move this way either because you got ridging right here too. So what goes on here is eventually, once it kind of figures out what's going to do, it doesn't have hardly any steering currents. This trough basically gets it. It kind of merges with it or pulls it away and pulls whatever energy is left of it away. And there you go. See you later, buddy. So that's it with potential Anna. It's a big deal because it'll be our first named storm of the season. That's the only really big deal it would be, and it would be before June 1st. So that's kind of the only big deal about it. Now this is more interesting. This is satellite imagery of the cluster of basically rain showers and storms that has been slamming areas of Texas over the last several days, and actually will continue to do so in Louisiana. You have a big time tropical feed right here just going into eastern Texas and Louisiana. But this right here, even if you look at it, you can almost see a little spin right in here. It's not really a spin though, but you can tell there is an area of something of this kind of disorganization going on that could potentially organize. This happens a lot in May. It can happen any time of the year, but especially early in the season. What happens here is you got a ridge in place. You're not getting any storms over here in the southeast. But this energy comes out here and it stalls out and it can't really move. It's almost like a stalled out front. And a lot of times these can be your homegrown systems, meaning kind of what it sounds like, you know, basically almost like the pattern over the lower 48 kind of creates this in a way. So what goes on with this? Can we get any development out of this? Well, I think we can. So we'll get going here in time here. We're going to look at the European. All models are kind of showing this. Some models are showing it more than others. The latest European almost has this thing going to a weak tropical storm. I don't think that's going to happen, but let me tell you, some weird things happen in this area. Harvey happened in this area, and a lot of times things can overproduce in this area, especially in July and August when the Gulf of Mexico really starts to warm up. So we can't completely downplay anything that happens in this area. Warm waters can do some incredible things in this area. But here you go, you're getting into tomorrow, you're getting into Friday, and check it out here. This is this time tomorrow. This happens quick. This all happens in the next 24 to 36 hours. This is why it's interesting to talk about this. And then whatever develops, whether it's a depression or whatever it may be, it kind of dwindles into Texas. No wind threat at all. Maybe some gusty winds. But the real big threat would be more rain on top of all the other rain the sun fell in this area of Texas over the last several days. But basically, how much can this develop? Can it make it to a storm? Well, you check it out. And this is temperatures in Celsius. It's certainly not 25 degrees Fahrenheit in the Gulf of Mexico. This is Celsius. So if you're wondering what 26, 25 degrees Celsius is in Fahrenheit, that's around the upper 70s, give or take. You know, you start to get to 27, 28, 29, you're starting to get into the lower 80s in Fahrenheit. It's actually cooled down a little bit, believe it or not. Probably just due to all these disturbances that's been right off the coast of Louisiana and Texas have kind of churned the waters up and cooled them down a little bit, but it's in the upper 70s. Temperature's not very favorable for development. Upper 70s, you just need to start to get into the low 80s for it to be favorable for tropical development. So it's got a little bit of warm. Sea surface temps are a little bit warm enough, but barely. We already showed this. Okay, so we get going here in time. What's kind of steering this thing? Well, it's pretty simple. You got an upper ridge right here in place, and you have a little bit of troughing down here. But there's enough influence for this thing to kind of meander into Texas right here. But the real thing that's steering this is the upper ridge right here. It's not going to move this way. It's just going to kind of gradually move into Texas. I mean, there's not really much to the steering currents. It's pretty cut and dry there. You kind of look at the precipitation right here. This is just based off regular moisture feed off basically a Gulf flow going into Louisiana. But check it out here as you're going through in time. This is all from the potential development. right down here in Houston, points south. This is off potential development, whatever rain falls. So that's a few inches of rain that could fall off this system. So that's definitely a big deal. You notice the EPS cyclone location, it's picking up on this on weathermodels.com. And it's definitely picking up on some kind of development of a cyclone. And look, all of them pretty much zone it in right into the central coast of Texas, of the Gulf of Mexico here. So this is definitely looking like something that's going to get mentioned very soon. I want to mention this. Check it out. This is percentage of this becoming a tropical depression off the EPS ensembles. So you got a solid, pretty much that orangish color, which is 80 to 85% chance of this becoming a tropical system, a tropical depression. There's also a decent, here we can click this right here. What's the chances of becoming a tropical storm? Well, it's pretty low, but there's still a chance. It's a 25 to 30% chance if we're looking at the EPS ensembles. So it's certainly something interesting to watch. One thing that for some reason is not pulling up here that I thought had pulled up, maybe I messed up here. Here, we can get it up really quick. It's shear. A lot of people will mention this. Well, is there any shear in place to really tear this up? Well, there is a little bit. This is kind of right now. This is getting into overnight. And there is some shear in spot. And here it comes, development. But you notice there's only shear, which is pretty much dry air. You know, there's only shear kind of on one side of the system. So, but it's going to get wrapped up into the system. So it's not going to develop much. Even if there was some decently warm waters, it would have trouble development. So there's a little shear interacting with the storm. But, you know, it's not a lot. We can go down here and look at, let's look at this right here. Sorry, guys, I should have had this up, but I keep thinking of things as I'm going in this video. You notice here in time, I didn't mean to say dry air with the shear. That's definitely not what I meant. It's shear. Shear basically rips apart hurricanes. You get them when you have a trough, a cold front, and you just have natural shear. And they tend to just shred hurricanes. High elevations tend to shred hurricanes. We'll talk more about that once more scenarios come up in the future. But you can just look at the moisture flow kind of, and that is some deep tropical moisture in a very small area, which symbolizes some kind of tropical development too. So it's going to be interesting to see what develops. It really is. But the European, things like the Canadian, even the UK model is really starting to show this. If this happens, it's going to all happen very quickly. Very, very quickly. So we'll kind of continue to monitor this. Either way, there's no major threats to anybody except flooding potentially. No wind threats, nothing like that. But the main thing is it's very interesting to already see this kind of stuff in mid to late May. Not super uncommon, but very interesting to watch. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a blessed night.